Looks like recording. All right, hello everyone. I'm going to run over chapter 3 for nutrition, BI 169 online, fall of 2020. So discussion closed a few days ago. Some of you posted relatively late and the information was very similar to everyone else. A lot of you didn't put any references in. All right, I guess maybe I wasn't clear. Maybe I should have suggested that all the information from Unit 1 could have easily been used in your food prepping, food labels, making more nutritious choices. Some of you put some effort into it, but I have to say, all in all, some of you, there might have been about 6 minutes of effort and discussion. So here I'm going to say it again. You guys don't have to drive to campus. You literally don't have to drive to campus. You don't have to do a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of homework. So please, I'm going to ask you again to reread your syllabus. Only 10 of you have emailed me that you read the syllabus. So you're going to be graded on your exams, your discussions, and your final reflections. All right. So the discussions, you know, I'm not going to tell you how much time to put into it, but you could put a little effort into it. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. I'm going to go over chapter 3 relatively quickly. The exam for unit 2 I have ready in about 2 weeks, but I can move that up if you want to take that and start reading chapter 4 whenever you're ready. The course ends December 21st. So the information's all in Blackboard for you to read and research. Your discussion should be posting. The dates are there. Everything is in your calendar. So you should be aware of exactly what's going on. If something's not posting in Blackboard or if something's not showing up, please let me know. Sometimes it glitches or I click the wrong button or, I'm human. I make mistakes. So let's get started here. Right? Okay, pop. Get rid of these. All right, so I want to go over some food labels and get rid of some misnomers. And like I said, this is not nutrition for science majors. It's going to be basically basic nutrition for you guys. Sorry. All right, so let's just have some fun with the course, and this is a personal approach. So, how can you tailor this to yourself? And at the end, we're going to go over some of the basic diets, whether it's MyPlate or the Mediterranean or Asian diet. We have the vegan diet. We have people who are lactose intolerant, people that are gluten intolerant. So you're going to have to modify some of these things contingent upon your allergies, what you like, what you don't like, or, what, your lifestyle or your, it could be your culture or upbringing too. This can all affect what you decide to eat, when you decide to eat, and things like that. But requirements is nutritional health. So start realizing, well, if you don't have proper nutrition, what are some of the nutritional things that could happen? So if you didn't have enough caloric intake, you wouldn't have a lot of energy. If there was a problem with proteins, have an issue. If there's a problem with some of these cofactors or essential amino acids, you wouldn't be able to produce certain proteins or enzymes. So these will all be discussed in your book. And hopefully when we get into discussion 2 and 3 with vitamin deficiencies and diseases, you guys will start having discussions. So I am going to start putting test questions in your exams from discussion. So whether you decide to participate in discussion or not, it's completely up to you. You're adults, so that's up to you. All right. I know a lot of you didn't decide to, or didn't want to take a course online, but this is the current situation. All right. So if you're online, you're going to have to be motivated to do these things. And you have a lot of freedom to do this. You can do this asynchronously whenever you want. All right. So I realize the onus is going to be definitely on you. I'm doing what I can as far as videos for you to kind of guide you along, but you're going to have to put a little effort into the course. This is a college course, right? So, you know, influential factors, I said before, what are some of the things that influence what you eat or when you eat? You know, we could get into discussion on what's on TV, what's on advertising. Were you really hungry, or did you have that flash or the impulse that made you think you were hungry? We can talk later on, of course, about fast food and some of the chemicals they put in food that are addictive. I mentioned before in other videos how sugar is more addictive than cocaine and nicotine. Right? So storage, like storing food, and some of you were talking about meal prepping and you know, storage. So where you can portion control this, store it, freeze it. We're also talking about storage as far as keeping it fresh. Are we going to dry it? Are we going to freeze dry it? Dehydrate it? Things like that. Things that are not stored, are they readily available? Storage sites, all right, and use of storage. And this can be, you know, we could make this about how you're storing it for yourself in your freezer, or we can talk about the food supply in general. Where is it being stored? Do we have enough stores for it? And we all have gone through the recent epidemic or pandemic or whatever colloquialism or whatever word you want to use to describe it. So we did kind of realize, you know what, depending on the state and transportation and closed states that were closed, we could have a problem with getting food somewhere. It could have been in one state and we didn't have a way of getting it to another state. So there are some things that were going on currently that can alter whether things are available or not available, and even if they're stored. Do they go bad? How long are they nutritionally viable for? Right? So dietary reference intakes. Right? This is energy and nutrients, diet planning, and diet adequacy and evaluation. So you could spend a lot of time reading food labels and reading MyPlate and making sure you're doing all this. I don't know if that's really going to be an issue for us currently in our current state. You know, we're in a relatively wealthy country compared to other countries, so it may not be a problem. We generally have adequate access to food. Now, if some of you are doing this remotely or you're from inner city, I could just pick any city, Chicago or Atlanta or some areas that were inner city, there may not be a lot of grocery stores or fresh food or whatever available for you. So this might be something that you might have to plan out a little, put a little more effort into planning out. And, you know, please realize that some places there aren't a lot of stores for fresh fruits or vegetables or meats, and a lot of places the only thing that's available are fast food restaurants. All right, and there's, you know, there can be a moratorium on those. And I had mentioned before that some of these places people may have to walk literally a mile, without exaggeration, to find a market or some place that have fresh food. In some of these places, you know, we're in the US, but some of these places may not be safe to walk at all hours of the day. Right? And people may not have transportation, may not be available, or they may have to walk. So safety can be an issue. And safety can be an issue with what they're consuming, and safety can be an issue just getting the food itself. So things just to kind of think about. All right. EARs are estimated average requirement. And this is generally, you're going to use the median of 50% of the healthy population. So you kind of have to realize all of these things that they're talking about is basically picking the mean average person. So this mean average person isn't completely young. This mean average person isn't completely old. So we could just say, theoretically, it's a healthy 30-year-old who's not obese, no pre-existing conditions. That's what they're going to do, estimated average requirement. Average always is your median. Right? So they take all the figures all together, add them all up, divide them by the number of figures, and that's kind of your median or your mode statistically. So we have to determine like life stage. All right. So are they toddlers? All right. Are they adolescents where you going through the mitotic division rate much faster? So their metabolic rate's going to be a little higher. They may need proportionately more for that. All right. Or gender. I know we could always say, well, males generally require more than females, and that can do with body weight in water. Females generally are supposed to have a little bit more body fat. And we can talk about the geriatric population, whether it's male or female. The metabolic rate is going to slow down. They definitely have less subdural adipose tissue, so that can affect their metabolic rate, and not for dietary adequacy evaluation. So this is just really just an average number. Like I said, we're not going to be dietitians, or maybe you are, so this is maybe just kind of a introduction to basic nutrition. And this would be for scientific use. And this is, kind of how we can figure out how many grams of carbs or protein or vitamins or minerals or cofactors that we generally need to determine our meal size or our portion size. And, they are kind of revamping that, hopefully, because I don't know if they've changed it yet, but the serving size for a dill pickle was 3/4 of a spear. All right, so I mean, what do you do with the other quarter, right? So, yeah. So estimated energy requirement, right? The average daily energy intake. Right? So, you could say it's 2,500 or 3,000 is the average. That depends on your activity level, what you're doing, your metabolic rate, whether you're an ectomorph or endomorph, or your body size, or your basal metabolic rate, how much sleep you're getting, and a lot of different factors. We kind of have to think about that. And your book will discuss some of that, and these are just some things you have to, think about. So daily average energy intake. This is for healthy people. So if you were bedridden or not healthy, or you have other conditions going on, you're not going to require that much energy. You're not going to be that metabolically active. But you also have to realize that regardless of what you think, the majority of the calories you are consuming are to keep your basal metabolic rate active. And basal metabolic rate is all the metabolic activities going on in your body. So that's digestion, thinking, movement, breathing, respiration, your heart pumping, all the things that are going on, muscle tone, just to keep you alive. All right, so that's where the majority of your energy is used. Now, if it's cold out, you're going to be using more energy to produce heat. All right, if you're metabolically active, or if you're active working or hiking, or living on a farm, or you have a job in construction or whatever, and you're very, very active. Those are all kind of factors you would take into account, right? So, I see people at the store, or teenagers or young adults who are working construction, or, here in Western New York, landscaping people in the summer, and even right now, they're working 8 or 9 hours a day, very, very active. And I've seen them go in and order a tremendous amount of food, whether it's at Wegmans, or I don't go into fast food restaurants, so whatever, or if I do, it's very rare. I see them consuming a tremendous amount of food, and they're completely thin. So number one, they're younger, their metabolic rate is higher. All right, they're working all day long. So whatever they're consuming, they're probably burning off the majority of that, right? So that, that would tie into weight maintenance. And factors would be your physical activity, your height, your weight, your gender, and your life stage. And once again, the more you weigh, your basal metabolic rate, just to keep that amount of body mass alive, is going to be much, much higher. So somebody who weighs 350 pounds is going to need to consume more than somebody who weighs 150 pounds just to keep their basal metabolic rate going, all right? Obviously, or maybe it's not obvious, they've been over consuming food to become 350 pounds unless they're 6'5" and gigantic, or they're, maybe they're a pro athlete, but I still don't think they'd be 350 pounds, but I'm just kind of using it as an example. In gender, generally, these are all generalizations, exceptions to everything. Men generally need to consume more, all right? And the life stage, once again, the little picture here, we have a couple who's probably over 50, all right? And hopefully they're retired and happy. Their life stage will determine they probably don't need to consume as much as the person behind them who is a teenager or, a college student who's very, very active in the picture there. So their life stage, height, weight, physical activity, these are all factors into this. All right, recommended daily allowance, standards for most of the healthy population, and there's margins of safety. So it's just kind of an average. And if you look in here, low risk for deficiency or toxicity, if you're in that recommended daily allowance, they're saying if you skew over to the left here, lower intake, you have a high risk of deficiency. So that could be vitamin A, B, folate, B9, or it could be protein. Sorry guys, B12, if you were vegan, if you're not taking a protein source of that's really not that biologically valuable if it comes from a vegetable source. And then, believe it or not, there's a high risk of toxicity. So some vitamins, when we get into that discussion, you can have a toxicity for vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin C can cause rash, niacin can cause some reddening of the tongue and things like that. And we can talk about that if you guys want to get into that in discussion. Right. Adequate intake, there's no recommended daily allowance, and that's just a determination, right, of what's adequate intakes. And it depends on all those factors. Right. Tolerable upper intake level, right? It's just the highest average amount that is unlikely to be harmful, right? So like some of these vitamins, more is not always better. So some vitamins are very, very toxic. And even if we're still going to start talking about supplements, all right, even if it's a natural, or they claim to be a natural supplement, excuse me, some of these things can be toxic, especially if you consume so much that your liver can't get rid of any excess or superfluous vitamins or whatever it happens to be. It can be very, very toxic. Or let's say you have diminished liver capacity to diminished kidney function, that can even put you at a higher risk for some of these toxicity disorders. All right. Acceptable macro always means big nutrient distribution ranges. All right, so these are just kind of your ranges if you want to take this approach. Ranges for carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and dietary adequacy. So we can talk later on about whether you want, your 60, 40, 30 diet, for some of these things, or if you want to go into a low carb or reduced carb, increased protein, increased fats. You can have whatever thoughts you had before you come into the class, or you can have change of thoughts after you leave the class. Or if there are still people who believe that fat makes you fat. So I'm not going to argue that point, but generally increased or over excess of carbohydrates will be turned into fat, okay? Generally, fats are not turned into fat. Fats have a higher caloric content, gram per gram, than carbohydrates or proteins, but they do keep you satiated or fuller longer, and they also are useful for some of your fat-soluble vitamins like I had mentioned before. Right? So planning nutritious meals and snacks. So I was hoping that you guys would tie this into your meal prepping. So just kind of planning, how are you planning what you're eating? Or are you going to be like some of the population who just kind of runs to a vending machine or goes to a fast food restaurant. I don't know why I'm yawning. I just can't breathe out. I'm oxygen deficient. Or I don't know if you're from the Western New York area, Tim Hortons or Wegmans or any of these fast food restaurants or fast food places. Right. So food guidelines are consumer friendly, hopefully, and MyPlate's been redone at least 3 times since I started kind of discussing nutrition. So your major groupings are your grains, dairy foods, protein foods, fruits, vegetables, and other foods. Right? Other foods can be, I guess I would say, your empty calories or your alcohol. Those are they're food, but they don't really offer any nutritional value other than caloric intake. Right? And grains, we'll go into some of the different types of grains, and you can get into the discussion about how the grains now are nowhere near like the grains they had in ancient times with Egypt, or even the grains from the 1800s are completely different than the grains we have now. We get into some of this gluten intolerance or IBS or some of the things where we're altering the original type of grain or grasses. So grains would be your wheat, rice, oat products. Can be your pasta, noodles, crackers, and flour tortillas. You guys can eat whatever you want. I'm just going to suggest that pasta, noodles, crackers, and flour tortillas are really generally very, very processed. So any nutritional value other than caloric intake has probably been stripped from these. Cornmeal and popcorn. Cornmeal, as long as it's not made from genetically modified corn, is probably a healthy choice. And popcorn is very, very high in caloric intake. All right, not a whole lot of nutritional value in that, but some people love it. It's delicious, especially if you put butter or that fake butter they use in movie theaters. That's usually flavored peanut oil. Anyway. Macronutrients. So this macro would be something that you need to consume in large amounts. Your carbohydrates, you're going to be generally consuming that for your energy, all right? And your proteins, you're generally consuming that for structure and rebuilding and mitotic division. So that's really kind of your repair and building, producing your enzymes, digestive enzymes, hormones, other things like that. So kind of start thinking of carbohydrates as just kind of the fuel. Proteins are for your building blocks, for your amino acids, go to your ribosomes and pull on your nucleotides and put them together so you can make amino acids and go into proteins and so on. And whole grains. So whole grains would be something that doesn't have the wheat germs stripped from it. All right, like if you're going to eat pasta or other bleached flour, that's the grain. They've stripped the wheat germ off it, and you're just getting the internal component of it, and that's really, really processed. No nutritional value other than the carbohydrates in that. So enrichment would be refined cereal products, addition of iron and B vitamins, thiamine, riboflavin B2, niacin B3, and folic acid B9, right? So start reading labels and just saying it's enriched. I always had the joke about the total cereal, and I think I mentioned before, is just basically cornflakes where they spray on some vitamins. So they're enriched, all right? And please realize that a lot of times these enriched things are not from natural causes. And although they may have some added benefits, please realize they're probably not in whole food form, all right? And a lot of these things can be, you start being a wise consumer if you want to be. They can be marketing ploys. Right? Just to say, oh, well, I want this product because it says it's enriched or it had some vitamins sprayed on it or whatever. So fortification is addition of any nutrients, all right? Or if there's nutrient loss, we're going to try to add that in, or specific health benefits for some things. If you need additional vitamin C, or you need additional fortifying agents for a certain condition you have. So just kind of showing you all the different types of grain. 1 cup ready to eat cereal, all right? 1 cup cooked pasta, 1 cup cooked rice, or 1 cup cooked cereal. All right, so I guess if I had to, and you can look at the serving size, all right, all going to have about the same serving comparison. I mean, if I had to pick one of those to eat, I definitely would probably eat the cooked cereal, and it would have to be, you know, it would have to be some kind of oatmeal, and it would be in the pellet form, not the stuff that comes in the bag that you throw boiling water on. Right? 1 regular slice of bread here, 1 hamburger bun, or 5 crackers. All right, this would be my last choice right there, that bleach and flour hamburger bun, regular slice of bread. That could be, have molasses added to it to make it brown, or hopefully that's a 7-grain whole wheat bread. And there's 5 crackers. So we don't even know what's in that. Those look relatively healthier, some degree, other than some kind of bleached saltine cracker. Right. So just start thinking about here, these are all grains and they're all about the same serving size. So, you know, if you had to start making healthy choices, if you know, we're going to pick those, which one would you pick? All right. All right, so dairy foods would be milk or milk products. All right, so, you know, if you're not lactose intolerant, and I had the discussion before about how humans are probably the only species that consumes milk after they've been weaned. You know, totally your preference. I'm not saying milk is not as bad for you. I'm not saying, you know, whatever. Like I said, I grew up on an organic farm, and my milk came from the barn. And I did drink milk until I was about probably 18. Okay? So nutrients are your proteins, phosphorus and potassium, K+, vitamins A and D, very, very important for the integumentary system of your skin, riboflavin, one of the B vitamins. So these are all things that are in dairy foods. Right? And sometimes, you know, milk is fortified with A and D. You know, they're fortifying the milk because they're figuring, well, kids are going to drink it anyway, and might as well add this to it. I mean, that this, they're saying from ice cream, pudding, frozen yogurt, and ice milk. If you don't want to drink dairy milk per se. I was just showing you some serving sizes of how you get some of these things. Right? So whether it is milk, cheese. So if I had to pick one of those, I might consider yogurt, or I might consider cheese. 2 ounces of processed cheese or processed cheese food. I'm not sure that there's not some form of plastic in that. Just my thoughts. All right, so protein foods would be beef, pork, lamb, fish, shellfish, liver, poultry. If you're a vegan, beans, nuts, tofu, and seeds. Some vegans or vegetarians will consume eggs. It depends on your belief or how strict you are about that. Micronutrients would be iron and zinc. Those are consumed in some of these protein foods. They're already in it. All right, and saturated fats and cholesterol. All right, so please realize cholesterol is in every one of your cell walls by phospholipid layers. So if you're eating, you're going to say, well, beef, or a lot of these meats have a lot of cholesterol in them. Well, yes, because meat is muscle tissue, and you're consuming all those cells, and each cell has cholesterol in it, which holds the cell wall together. And saturated fats would be all the carbon bonds are double bonded, so they're saturated, they're not hydrogenated or altered. And here's just some serving sizes of protein, so whether that's dried beans or peas. Right? 1 ounce of meat, fish or poultry. All right, most of you would think that's one mouthful, all right, or 2 ounces is, you know, the dietary recommendation, which is a size sort of like your fist or a deck of cards or whatever it happens to be, or 1 egg, right? You know, other things you can get, peanut butter, regular tofu, or some nuts or seeds. So other sources of proteins or things that you can add to other things to get some sort of protein. So fruits can be fresh, dried, frozen, sauced, canned, or 100% fruit juice. All right, and be careful, you know, with this. So, you know, people say, well, fresh is always better. And I'm going to suggest that with fruits or vegetables, sometimes frozen is better because it might be picked on, let's just theoretically say it's picked on Tuesday or harvested on Tuesday. It is going to be processed by Wednesday or Thursday. All right. Some of the stuff that you're saying is fresh, you know, could have been picked on Tuesday and shipped across the country or from a different country, and it arrives to you on the following Tuesday. So theoretically, I'm going to say that sometimes frozen is actually has more nutritional value than some of the so-called fresh. All right, you know, dried is an option if you want to dehydrate it, like bananas or raisins would be dried grapes, or if you're going to use Whole Foods or any of the Lexington co-ops around here, you can get all kinds of dried fruits. So rather than eating candy, I could say, you know, here's some dried fruit. Okay, probably a healthier option. Either one's going to have some sugar in it. All right, sauced, canned fruits, probably my last resort because they're using some kind of syrup which has a lot of sugar in it. Right? And it does alter the texture of the fruit. You know, but some things you want canned peaches for, you know, whatever your personal thoughts are. You know, you might like that. What's that stuff? All that chopped fruit they put in those little cups, fruit cocktail, whatever, or 100% fruit juice. And, you know, and start reading that. If you don't believe me, start reading. It's going to say 100% fruit juice, but a lot of that could be grape juice would be a portion of that, or really try to find 100% fruit juice. Try to find 100% cranberry juice. Very, very rare. Now it's usually cranberry fruit cocktail, so it's some cranberry juice, and they added some sugar syrup to it. Right? So there was a whole story on that about how I can't think of the company because I'm brain dead. How he figured out how he could do that with the cranberry juice, and they actually, his bonus at the end of the year, he literally got enough money to buy a Volvo. That's a true story. All right, because he saved the company millions of dollars. So fruits are low in fat. There's not a lot of fat in fruits, but they're usually very, very high in sugar. They do have some vitamins and minerals and some fiber. Once again, please realize that the fruit that you're eating now probably has much less nutritional value than the fruit that your great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather grew in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s. All right. Phytochemicals are great for cancer causing and getting rid of some of free radicals. So that could be in blueberries and other fruits. Potassium, vitamin C, and folate. Folate is your B9. We'll talk about that when we start talking specifically about vitamins. And that is very, very important for fetal development. All right. Without it, the neural tube does not develop real well, and you can have all kinds of birth defects. All right, whole or cut up fruits. These are some portion sizes, you know, things that you could get. So vegetables can be fresh, cooked, canned, frozen, dried, or dehydrated, or 100% vegetable juice. And a lot of times, look to what vegetable juice is usually, they're going to grind up zucchini, all right, or summer squash. It's a vegetable. It contains juice. It's not going to be you know, your V8, or maybe you can get 100% tomato juice or some of these other carrot juice or these other juices, but start reading labels. And remember always that the first ingredient is the highest concentration. So whatever the first ingredient on the label ingredient is the one that has the highest portion of it in the substance. Right. Once again, fresh, canned, and frozen, we can have the same conversation about which is healthier. And a lot of times, frozen vegetables are going to be your healthier option, especially if it's something is out of season. So if it's out of season in your area, it was shipped in from somewhere, right? So dark green, orange, and starchy, right? Depending on whether it has beta carotene or whatever is in it. Some of them are starchy, so they're going to have some energy components to them too. Dried beans and peas. You're obviously not going to eat those dry unless you want to break your teeth, so you're going to rehydrate those. All right. So whether you're making bean soup or you're going to rehydrate it to make pea soup or whatever your thought process in that. So they have some micronutrients. They do have fiber. Once again, they have phytochemicals. They're low in fat and low energy. There's not going to be a lot of energy in them, but there's going to be fiber. And we'll talk later about fiber and how it can help you with digestion, keeps you satiated longer, and your microbiome needs a lot of fiber. And your microbiome is what's going to start digesting or breaking down that fiber for you in your digestive tract. Okay, so the oil group would be your canola oil, corn oil, olive oil, and other fats. You know, there's some controversy about canola oil being cancer-causing. Corn oil, you know, you can have a conversation about genetically modified corn. Olive oil, probably the healthiest at the moment, but you know, it depends on whether it's virgin olive oil, first pressed, second pressed. You know, can have these other things. Avocado oil is big now. Coconut oil is large, or is big and up and coming. Mayonnaise, margarine, and salad dressing. All right, so please realize mayonnaise is generally egg whites and some oil, beet, margarine. You guys can look that up. I personally will not eat it. To me, I just consider that plastic, but I could be a heretic. Salad dressing is usually the same as mayonnaise. They add a little bit more vinegar to it. And you could have the mayonnaise or salad dressing conversation, or say, you know, mayonnaise is great for salad, or salad dressing is great for salad, or salad dressing is for salad, mayonnaise is for sandwiches, whatever your personal preference is. Some people hate mayonnaise, some people hate salad dressing. So your solid fats would be solid at room temperature. So beef, fat, butter, lard, right, pig's fat, shortening. Right, so shortening generally is chemically altered to be solid at room temperature. Just helps store it. You know, some people say that it makes better baked goods. Cream is a fat. Cream cheese and sour cream, right? And you know, if I may have shared the story before, but I remember going to the store and looking for a half and half. And all I could find was fat-free half and half. And I went to the people there, the person in the dairy department, and I said, well, where's your half and half? And he said, it's right there. And I said, well, that's fat-free half and half. He said, yeah, I know. I said, well, half and half should be half cream, half milk. I said, how can you have fat-free half and half? There can't be any cream in there if it's fat-free. And they looked at me like I had three heads. But anyway. So sugary foods, candy, regular soft drinks, jelly, high added sugars. So these are things you can consume if you want. We can talk about tooth decay and empty calories and insulin levels and diabetes and your pancreas and the biofilms that grow in your teeth, especially if you're giving them food so they can ferment that and it turns to acid and starts rotting your teeth and your gums. You know, we can talk about that if you guys want, or you want to add something in discussion with your classmates. Probably a really good topic. and alcoholic beverages. All right, so they're a source of caloric intake, but they don't offer you any other nutritional benefits per se. You know, you could have the argument about, well, beer is fermented, it helps your digestive tract. Yes. Wine has tannic acids, and you know, some things it lowers blood pressure. So yes, I'm going to give you that. But in general, alcohol wouldn't be considered an actual food, right, by most people. Right? In combination of foods. All right, so we could talk about different meal diets, Mediterranean or Latin or Asian or whatever, or if you know, hopefully there's somebody that you know or somebody in the class who is vegan, and how you need to combine certain things together to get all of the essential things you need, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were devised basically to give you all those things in one meal. Right? It's probably a poor example, but you know, rice and beans were over time were put together so that combination would give you all the things that you need, essential things you need to live. Right, so more than one food group. So pizza, sandwiches, and casseroles are kind of designed over time to be a meal to give you all those things all together at one time. All right, so serving sizes of individual ingredients depend. So I personally don't eat a lot of pizza. If I do, it's going to be cauliflower crust. Generally, if it's regular crust, I prefer it thin. Some tomato sauce with not a lot of sugar, and I do love extra cheese and extra pepperoni, maybe some mushrooms on it. You know, if you're vegetarian per se, you could get cauliflower crust, tomato paste, some vegan cheese, and some vegetables, tomato and basil. I'm just saying, like, your personal preference can determine what you're going to consume with that. Right. There's just some different examples of serving sizes. So you can mentally think about how much you're consuming. And, you know, if we all sat down and did a food diary, or we actually really thought about what we eat, we probably all overeat or eat more than we probably need to. Right? So dietary guidelines for Americans, and you know, this is automatically 10 years old. Right? So nutrition-related lifestyle recommendations promote nutritional status and health. So maintain caloric balance over time to achieve and sustain a healthy weight. Right? So that's the key. And you know, that's going to change depending on your activity level and your age. You know, the older you get, the harder it is to keep your metabolic rate up. The harder it is to not have excess pounds unless you're really, really strenuously watching what you consume. Right? And focus on consuming nutrient-dense foods and beverages. So it was kind of what I was hoping you guys would start thinking about with your meal prepping. Like, here's some things that I could eat, and what would be some more nutritious things that I could substitute, you know, rather than a soda or things like that. Could I have water with lemon, or water with lime, or water with cucumber slices, or you know, could I have tea, a little bit of honey in it rather than a soft drink, or going to Starbucks or getting some kind of syrup-laden flavored coffee. All right, so just start thinking about that. And you know, we got to realize that if you're accustomed to that, or it's something that you crave, or you know, let's say you wanted to have a milkshake, well, could you go and get a fruit smoothie instead? I'm just trying to give you some examples of things that you might want to start thinking about. And, you know, once again, I don't want you guys to automatically up and change your dietary input or thoughts immediately. So just small changes. So hopefully by December, we'll have, you know, some thoughts about what we're putting in our body. And we all have to remember too, it's October 1st, I think. So we have to start thinking, it's going to be Thanksgiving, Christmas. So we're going to start overeating. And, you know, this time of year, by nature, we're going to start eating more because theoretically, back in the day, this was harvest time, right? So people harvest and they really wanted to consume things while they were pumpkin squash and corn and things while they're here because you wanted to put on a little bit of your winter weight because you didn't know, like it could be February or March and food could be getting scarce, hunting might be getting scarce, and there wouldn't be as much food around. So theoretically, genetically, we're programmed to eat more this time of year. So now is really the time to start thinking about, well, what could I change or what could I consume less of or what kind of small changes could I make? So over time, I would keep the weight off. And just remember, each 3,000 calories of excess, or every 3,000 to 3,500 excess calories you consume could potentially turn into a pound of body weight, of adipose tissue. And for every pound of adipose tissue, your body literally has to produce a mile's worth of capillaries to feed that. So let's say you're 30 pounds overweight. Now your body has to produce 30 miles of capillary beds to feed that tissue. So your heart has to pump all that blood through 30 miles of capillary beds to feed that. So you wonder why people that are overweight have higher blood pressure. Well, physiologically, the heart has to pump harder to pump that fluid, that blood, a longer distance, okay? We won't get into all the physiology behind that, but just kind of keep that in mind as a side. So dietary guidelines, these are just guidelines and, you know, it depends on what you eat. I know people that won't eat a vegetable if their life depended on it, or, you know, they'll eat some fruits and not others, or they won't eat, you know, certain things like, God forbid, you give them a piece of broccoli or beet or something that is relatively healthy or something that would cleanse their liver or their, you know, their system out a little bit, they won't consume it. But these are balancing calories to manage weight. You know, it's key. That should make sense to everyone. Foods and food components to reduce. So what are some things that you really don't need? All right. Foods and nutrients to increase. So, you know, we have to figure out, well, let's not overeat. Right? We don't want to undereat. Foods and food components to reduce. So what are some things we can get rid of? You know, is it that ice cream? Is it the candy bar? Is it, you know, cookies, whatever. And I, you know, have the argument with, not really, well, I used to have an argument with all the vending machines here, and I thought, well, you know, the only thing in there that is worth eating is the peanuts or the almonds. I said, everything else in there is complete garbage. And I look, and sometimes the peanuts and almonds are everything that's left, and I'm thinking, well, what are you guys eating here? You know, the Pop-Tarts are gone, and the Kit Kat bars and Snickers bars are all gone. And I'm thinking, what in God's name are you guys eating? Right. So food and nutrients to increase. So what are some things that you could increase? So obviously, fresh fruits and vegetables would be a better option. You know, even water would be a better option. All right, so here's just kind of, if you usually eat, and this is what I want you guys to start thinking about, like, here's a white bread and roll. So this is bleached flour, no nutrition other than carbohydrates. So whole wheat or roll. So it's going to be a little bit better. It's still not, bread's still probably not the best thing to eat unless you really need it for caloric intake. Sugar ready to eat cereals as opposed to something that's a little bit more whole food or having more fiber. So when I was a kid a long time ago, I remember we used to have cereal in the house, and then my mother, remember her reading the ingredients and looking that sugar was like the #1 ingredient in a lot of these cereals. So literally, I remember her vividly throwing all the cereal in the garbage. Literally took it outside in the garbage can and threw it all out. And after that, the only cereal we were allowed to have, I think, was Cheerios and possibly, I think, Chex Mix was the only other thing that we were allowed to have, right? And there was never any candy, cookies in our house, but there was always fruit in a fruit bowl, and there were always vegetables cut up in the refrigerator. That's how we lived. All right, here's some kind of fast food, so a panini or something roasted. So just start kind of thinking sweet rolls, donuts, and salty snacks. I really don't think that muffins are any better, because if you look at a muffin, if you look at the portion size is going to be a third of a muffin. All right, and I've never seen a muffin that was under 1,000 calories. So probably let's just eliminate this whole thing right here. Regular soft drinks, and they can have up to a quarter cup of sugar in them. All right. So water, fat-free milk, 100% fruit juice, still probably very high in caloric intake. So just kind of have an idea of things that you could change or eliminate. All right. There's some information on MyPlate. So depending on if you want to abide by that, I'm not going to say what's right or wrong. I just said this is, for me, this is nutrition for personal. It's your personal approach to it. So deciding on what you want to do with it. All right. Tools for children, pregnant or breastfeeding women. So all these, that demographic right there probably has to really think about eating more nutritious foods. All right. All right. Empty calories. So things that you really should avoid whenever possible. So cakes, cookies, pastries, donuts, sugar sweetened soft drinks, sports drinks, unless they're 0 calorie. They're just really full of sugar, and they're going to put some electrolytes in it. But really, if you think about it, nothing hydrates better than water. So water, if you want to add a little sodium to it, that's fine. All right, so sports drinks are fine if you are extremely active and you're really, really dehydrated, possibly. All right, so water, maybe a little bit of fruit juice in it. Cheese, pizza, and ice cream. I'm going to disagree. Cheese is not really empty calories. There is some protein and some dairy component too. So your book says that. I'm going to disagree. And some pizzas, like I said, if you're going to use cauliflower crust and some things, you can make it healthier than the pizza you're going to buy that's going to be all dough and sauce and pepperoni and nitrates and things like that. So empty calorie allowance. So this is total energy needs. Remaining energy after regular foods are consumed. So if you're regularly consuming regular foods and you still have a dearth or a diminished amount of calories, so let's just say you only consumed that day 2,500 or 2,500 calories, and you needed 500 more calories, then absolutely, you know what, have a cookie or whatever. And you know, if you're a teenager or a young adult and you're relatively thin, it's possible that you need all that, but the majority of the population doesn't really need the cookies or the dessert. I don't know what if you guys sit down for dinner or whatever, but in my family, dessert was every Sunday night. If I had dinner with my grandparents or whatever, we would have dessert. Other than that, it just was not a thing. Dessert, I guess, like maybe Jell-O, I guess, would be the only thing that we ever had available for dessert, and that had some gelatin in it. So in case you don't know, that's ground up horse's hoofs. So it's protein, keratinized protein. So whatever. You can go by MyPlate, and they're going to tell you, and like here I said, the kilocalories. Women, 2,400, men to 3,200. It really depends on your height, weight, physical activity, and they're just kind of showing you what you should be consuming according to that. And there's food guide pyramids from the 1980s. Some of you probably weren't even born. I was literally still in high school. Mediterranean food guide, Asian diet pyramid, eating well with Canadian food guide, right? Some different things that they'll show you. So Mediterranean diet, and it's been proven that we do blood work, and these people have low cholesterol and are generally healthier because their whole lifestyle is different, right? And, you know, if someone from our country looked at this in the 80s, they would have said, well, you know, the ADA or whatever would have said, oh, that's terrible, you're going to die, or whatever. And it turns out not so much. There's the Asian diet pyramid. So their culture is completely different. So their base, so the majority of it is going to be rice, bread, corn, all right, some avocado, some beans, vegetables, all right, and that's what they're eating. So that could be cultural, or let's just say it's Asian. So maybe let's say they were in China, overcrowded China or whatever, you know, and meat wasn't really available. So they would have to, they would eat the bare minimum they needed. And everyone can have the argument that we consume way more protein or meat than we need. And I'm not going to argue that point because I would say generally, I would have to agree with that. Right? So making sense of food labels. So start reading food labels and start deciding, you know, reading food labels on how much fat is in there, how much sodium is in there, and start looking for marketing ploys or things that they're putting on the label that make it sound better than the product next to it. You know, and start reading labels, your store brand as opposed to the national brand. Is there really a difference, or is it the same exact thing, just labeled differently? All right, and then start thinking about going to stores where they don't have any genetically modified food or any healthier food. I don't know where you guys are tuning in from, but a lot of people will say, well, I'll never shop at Aldi's, right? But Aldi's is a German company, and they may have changed somewhat now, but back when they first came to the area, they would not allow any genetically modified food into their stores. And Aldi's and Trader Joe's are the same company, they're subdivisions. All right, so I would have to say, I would hope that they might have slightly healthier food choices than, I don't know, Save a Lot or Tops or whatever. What are the other places other choices you might possibly have? So nutritional facts panel, the total amount of energy from fat, nutrient contents, ingredients, serving size, number of servings. The other thing, I don't know if your book talks about it, I'm pretty sure you do, it's not here, but country of origin, where did it come from? All right, where is it coming from? So I'm not going to mention any countries at the moment, but there are certain countries where I will not consume that food knowingly. All right, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just going to say that it's possible that their plants or their factories may not have as stringent safety regulations that we would have in this country, or supposedly have in this country. All right, so there's just a breakdown of what's on there. So if I were to ask you guys on a test or whatever, you know, name something that isn't on the food label. All right, so it's just say manufacturer's name and address. So where was it manufactured? List of ingredients. All right, remember, the order of it tells you the concentration of it. You know, sugars, I always read the carbohydrates and the sugars. Always. I'm not a big fan of excess carbohydrates. All right, I'm not like lunatic about it, but I just don't consume things that are high in carbohydrates. All right, number one, I just don't want to spike my blood sugar, screw with my insulin, and it's just not necessary. Right? Identity of the food, all right, and net contents, the weight of that. All right, and there's your serving size, and I think you're all going to be shocked by that. And then I also want to mention here, when I shop, or you know, I try to, my family or students or whatever, and no matter what class I'm talking about, when I shop, I generally always go around the perimeter of the store. All right, so I want to go to fruits and vegetables, meat, dairy, all around the perimeter. And then if I have to, I'm going to go get paper products, maybe some bottled water or whatever, where I have to go into the aisles. But you're never going to find me very often in the cookie aisle or potato chip aisle or whatever. I might grab some popcorn or something. But you're never going to see me in that. And I have been shopping in the area, and I've had former students who were working at the store, and they always look in my cart and they're like, "Oh, Dr. Phil, you really don't buy this stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, I really don't buy that stuff, guys." Right. So requirements on the panel. So you want the total fat, specific fat. So is it saturated fat, trans fat, or cholesterol? All right, I'm not afraid of saturated fat or cholesterol. You need both of those. Trans fat, I'm a little bit sketchy on because you're altering the carbon bonds, and then if that gets used to make your biphospholipid layer of your cells, there's research or suggestions that can allow things in the cell that might be induce the cell to be slightly more prone to DNA mutation or cancer. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. So sodium and total carbohydrates. So people can say sodium's bad for you, low sodium, whatever. So if some people, excess sodium will cause them to have excess blood volume and give them high blood pressure. All right, this is true. But the majority of the population, you can consume as much sodium as you want. If you drink enough water, your body, if your kidneys are functioning, they will flush it out. All right? I'm not saying, grab a salt lick like a horse or a cow and start licking it, but I'm just saying sodium is an essential electrolyte, and it does regulate all the water regulation in your body, but your kidneys have to regulate that with sodium, excreting sodium, potassium, and running these ionic changes. Right? Total carbohydrates. Like I said, I'm not a big carbohydrate fan. Depending on your activity level, your age, you may need those. Right? So fiber, sugars, protein, vitamin A, C, calcium, and iron are all important things to be on the label. Serving size, and then ingredients. All right. And once again, I read the ingredients. I remember, I won't tell you the store, but true story, I remember going in and looking at, it was last summer, and I was thinking about, well, maybe I could do burgers or easy or whatever. And I said, I saw these burgers, and I'm just going through reading all the ingredients, figuring, well, I don't want one with added sugar, I don't want one with breadcrumbs or whatever. And I remember looking, and literally it said, number one ingredient was myocardium. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And I thought, well, myocardium, that's heart muscle. And then I thought, oh my God, it's true. I mean, it is beef, right? It's muscle from beef. It just has to be heart muscle. And short of throwing up, I threw the box back down. I thought, oh my God, if I hadn't read the ingredients and bought that, imagine biting into a myocardium burger. So just start really reading ingredients, be educated. So daily values are simplified and more practical than the dietary, what they're advising. It's just daily values are much easier. So based on 2,000 kilocalorie diet per day, established for total fat, cholesterol, total carbohydrates, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So just kind of get an idea of what you're consuming, and there's a lot of cheat room here and there. So just really start. I don't really care that you memorize all that, but just start realizing, what am I eating and how can I change that? So design for product comparison for helpful choices. So really just start comparing things back and forth. And you could go in and look at macaroni and cheese. People love macaroni and cheese. I'm not going to say it's not delicious, but if you think about it, it's macaroni. It's completely refined pasta or flour, and then cheese. So whether it's the powdered stuff you add milk or oil to, or it's the packet, all right, either one, probably not the healthiest choice. Growing up, I remember my mother heating milk on the stove and then grating cheese into it and making the cheese. And then the pasta was, you know, whatever they had, Kraft or whatever, before wheat pasta came out. But, you know, we never had pasta out of the box. All right, so it's just showing you some nutritional facts. So what you kind of want to look for. Right? And now, you know, I'm always going to choose something that has higher dietary fiber. Right? But here, whole wheat flour, water, brown sugar, wheat gluten, cracked wheat, wheat bran. So these are all going to be diminished. Right? So I'm concerned about brown sugar being the third ingredient. Okay. Wheat gluten, I'm not sure if that's a great idea either. So claims on food labels. So the other thing I want you guys to start thinking about is reading these food labels and what are they really saying on this? So is it a health claim? Are they saying thought to reduce blood pressure, or, you know, are they just making, can they substantiate these claims, or are these just empty claims to make you pick reduced fat wheat thins over regular wheat thins? All right. The other argument I have with everyone in my family is I will never buy something reduced fat, right? Because fat doesn't make you fat. Fat satiates you longer. And if you don't believe me, look at something that's reduced fat and regular. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Anything reduced fat always has a higher carbohydrate ratio. So the reduced fat could have 8 grams of carbs. The regular could have 6. All right, so they have to add more carbs if we're taking the fat out. So nutrient content claim. So is it free of this, high fiber, low fat, natural flavoring, natural color? What does it mean it's natural? All right. Light, reduced fat, low calorie, lean, extra lean. So these are all things that they can't substantiate. They're going to make you think that's going to be slightly healthier, or it's going to have some kind of health benefit. So just kind of keep that in mind if possible. Right. The last portion I think would be supplements. So vitamins, mineral, herbs, or amino acids. The Dietary Supplement Health Education Act of 1990. So we really want to start looking at that. So they're not having, I don't want to use a quackery, but unsubstantiated health claims. All right. And I mentioned before dietary supplementation. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I personally choose whole food supplementation. You can choose, you know, whatever you want. And I'm not going to lie and say that whole food supplementation isn't better, but it is more expensive. But I kind of tell students and my patients, well, you could spend $35 and waste it, or you could spend $50 and have it do something. So it's kind of a thought process. Right? And anyone who wants to look up whole food supplementation as opposed to fractionalized or laboratory grade stuff, feel free. So most popularly multivitamin, multi-mineral, fish oil omega-3. All right, a lot of good health claims on that as far as heart health and cholesterol and sclerosing of the arteries. But just realize that even fish oil can be, you know, I take cod liver supplements from Standard Process. But you also, if you want to, break open that fish oil and smell it. Sometimes it's rancid. That's probably not the best thing. I don't want to use scare tactics, but I really want you to start thinking about what you're consuming. And if you're buying these fish oil or omega-3s, is it worth the money, or are you just wasting it? So is your fish oil $9 and the organic real stuff is $11? So are you wasting $9 to save $2, or is it better off to buy the $11 one and take one every other day or whatever? I'm just trying to give you an idea of what to start thinking about doing. Glucosamine is supposed to be really good for your joints. It's a component of your synovial joints. The only caveat to that is it usually takes 2 or 3 months for that to start rebuilding the the cartilage in the joints. And please realize cartilage and joints are not vascularized. So they take a very, very long time to heal, and sometimes they don't really heal well at all. Because the only way that that joint is getting nutrients is through that synovial fluid, and that's only by movement. So if you're immobilized or not moving real well, that joint's never going to heal real well. All right, echinacea, flaxseed oil and pills. These are some really popular supplements, and you can, look up, well, why does someone take flaxseed oil? Why does someone take all these other pills? This is something they saw on Facebook or Instagram or in a magazine. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And now there's like keto pills and all these things out there. So just kind of research. And if it's, the other thing is money back guarantee. Well, I guess if you're going to follow up on that, it's a great thing. Otherwise, it's just something to get you to buy it. If it really, really totally worked, they wouldn't really need to back that up per se. All right. Supplement facts panel, must describe a particular supplement or ingredient, serving size. All right. And they've circled this down here. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The product is not intended for diagnosis, treatment, cure, or prevention of any disease. All right. They're saying provides essential nutrients, supports health and well-being. Well, how? All right. It has beta carotene, biotin, vitamins A and C. All right, support your, A and D. C is good for collagen. E is good for your biphospholipid layer, your cell walls, and things like that, hair and nails. But can you prove it? Or you can just say, well, beta carotene is a derivative of vitamin A, and you need it for your skin, so therefore this is a great product. All right. So supplements. Title makes panel easy to identify the package. What is it? A serving size, manufacturer name and address. Like I said, if this comes from certain countries, I'm sure as hell not going to take it. It's a dietary supplement, and these are going to have different regulations than food per se too. All right. FDA disclaimer is important. And they're just showing you some of these things, dietary supplement and what their major claim is for. So echinacea, immune system, fish oil prevents heart disease and stroke. It's supposed to cure rheumatoid arthritis. It's supposed to help break down sclerotic plaques in your arteries. Garlic is supposed to be really good for your blood, cholesterol levels. Ginger, morning sickness like ginger ale or any kind of stomach upset it's supposed to really help with. Melatonin is supposed to help you with sleep, if you're deficient in it. Valerian root is for relaxation. So vitamin and mineral supplements, natural foods. Like I said, if you can get your supplementation from just eating really, really healthy, that's great. But remember, I kind of alluded to the fact that the soil right now is really diminished. And even if you ate an apple, a great big apple, and it could be genetically modified, or realize that there's maybe 12 different apples available. Back in the day when my great-great-grandfather had a farm in Oswego, there were 20 or 30 different varieties, and it was all organic. There wasn't no pesticides. The soil was much, much richer. They did crop rotation, things like that. So it's possible that you could consume all the stuff, be full, and still not get the nutrient stores that you would have gotten even 20, 30, 40 years ago. All right, so whole food supplementation may be necessary if you're lacking something. Megadosing, probably not a great idea unless you have some kind of deficiency, or it's a water-soluble vitamin and you're peeing it out, or you're not consuming enough fats to hold the fat-soluble vitamins. Niacin, vitamin B6, vitamin C, vitamin A, D. Vitamin D, about megadosing, but you would probably want to take more of that in the winter months. You don't have sun, produce vitamin D1, converted to D2, and then converted to D3 in your kidney. calcitriol for absorption of calcium for bone density. All right, selenium. But just realize megadosing is not a great idea. Vitamin C, as a side note, if you're going to have any kind of surgery, megadosing on vitamins, natural vitamin C from rose hip or something like that can help collagen formation, and it can diminish scar tissue, just as a side note. More isn't always better, and realize some of these can be toxic. Niacin can cause, not thrush, it's called the red, I can't think of the name of it. Your tongue can get really, really red. You can start breaking out the rash or hides from that. Herbal supplements, as far as safety, some plants that are poisonous, comfrey, sassafras, kava, mei huang, in high doses can be poisonous. We grew comfrey on the farm. It was actually good for digestion. We just drank it and we dry it, and then we would make tea out of it, but we didn't overdo it. Herbal teas, echinacea. If you're growing that purple flower, you can use that for boosting your immune system. Right? And there are some herbs that can start interacting with some sulfa drugs, cancer drugs, and some of these other pharmaceuticals. So you you have to be slightly cautious about that, I guess. Right? To take dietary supplements, I said, if necessary. Natural food versus supplements. If you can get it from natural food, it's always better. Whole food, like I said, your body recognizes whole food. It digests it, it absorbs it really well. If you're going to buy something fractionalized, a lot of times your body doesn't recognize it, or it doesn't break down. It doesn't, cofactors and some of the receptors don't really line up real well. So health conditions, maybe you need more. Pregnancy, you may need more than normal. You're kind of eating for two. Or sometimes there's some things you shouldn't be taking during pregnancy because it can be, too much can be dangerous for the fetus, because remember, the fetus isn't breathing and its heart's not pumping. So it's getting all of its oxygen and nutrient supplies right from the mother. We're bypassing the heart and the lungs with that. And the older age. So sometimes you need more because, you know, especially with B12 and some of these B vitamins, or their digestive system, their microvilli may be diminished, or maybe from decades of eating toxic or foods you're allergic to. Their microvilli or their surface area of their GI tract is not great, or maybe their microbiome is completely diminished from antibiotic therapy or whatever. So there are some things you have to take into consideration with the geriatric population. All right, guys, I hope I didn't go on for 1,000 years, but all right, I'm going to record this and pop it into Blackboard. So finish up chapter 1, 2, and 3. I will open the discussion. I think it should be open. You should be able to access it. So start thinking about discussion 2. And I'm going to be grading your discussions strictly by the rubric. So don't be shocked if you did 5 minutes of work and you got a 20 or whatever. So I'm just saying, I was pretty clear about reading the rubric and what I expected in, I think, the first 2 videos. So, all right, study.